You wake up every morning, go through the motions of your daily routine, achieve your goals, check off your to-do lists, and yet there's something profoundly missing. It's as if you're living your life from the outside looking in, watching yourself go through the motions while feeling fundamentally disconnected from it all. You're successful by society's standards, you have relationships, you have achievements, but inside there's this gnawing sense of emptiness that you can't quite explain or shake off. If this resonates with you, you're not alone. In fact, you're experiencing something that the legendary psychologist Carl Jung identified as one of the most profound psychological crises of our time. Jung didn't just study this emptiness from an academic perspective, he lived through it himself. And what he discovered about the nature of this void will fundamentally change how you understand yourself and your place in the world. Today, we're going to dive deep into Jung's revolutionary insights about why you feel empty inside, and more importantly, what you can do about it. But I need to warn you, this isn't going to be a quick fix or a simple solution. What Jung discovered about emptiness goes to the very core of who you are as a human being. And understanding it requires us to question everything we've been told about success, happiness, and meaning. The emptiness you feel isn't a bug in your system, it's a feature. It's your psyche's way of telling you that something essential is missing from your life, something that no amount of external achievements or distractions can fill. Jung called this the call of the self, and ignoring it is what's keeping you trapped in this cycle of hollow existence. Carl Jung himself experienced this profound emptiness during what he called his confrontation with the unconscious, a period of intense psychological crisis that lasted several years. He described it as feeling like he was menaced by a psychic landslide which could sweep away all my attainments. But it was through this dark period that Jung made some of his most important discoveries about the human psyche and the nature of meaning. Jung realized that the emptiness we feel in modern life isn't just a personal problem, it's a collective crisis. We've created a society that prioritizes external achievement over internal development, that worships at the altar of productivity and success, while ignoring the deeper needs of the human soul. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But most of us spend our entire lives becoming who we think we should be instead. This disconnect between who we truly are and who we think we should be is what Jung identified as the root cause of that persistent emptiness. We've been conditioned to believe that happiness comes from external sources, the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right lifestyle. But Jung discovered that true fulfillment comes from something entirely different, the process of individuation, or becoming whole. The modern world has given us unprecedented levels of comfort, safety, and opportunity, yet rates of depression, anxiety, and existential emptiness have skyrocketed. This isn't a coincidence. Jung understood that when our basic survival needs are met, the psyche automatically begins to seek something deeper: meaning, purpose, and authentic self-expression. But our culture has no framework for this deeper quest, leaving millions of people feeling successful but empty, accomplished but unfulfilled. Jung observed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The emptiness you feel isn't something to be escaped or medicated away. It's a messenger, carrying vital information about what your soul truly needs. Most people try to fill this void with external things: more work, more entertainment, more shopping, more relationships, more achievements. But Jung discovered that this emptiness can only be filled from within, through a process he called the work of a lifetime. This work isn't what you might expect. It's not about positive thinking or self-improvement in the conventional sense. It's about something far more radical: learning to have a relationship with the parts of yourself that you've been conditioned to reject, ignore, or suppress. Jung called this the integration of the shadow, and it's one of the most challenging but transformative processes a human being can undertake. Your shadow, according to Jung, contains all the aspects of yourself that you've deemed unacceptable. Your anger, your selfishness, your fears, your desires, your weaknesses. From childhood, you learn to hide these parts of yourself in order to be loved and accepted. But Jung discovered that when we reject these aspects of ourselves, we don't eliminate them, we simply push them into the unconscious, where they continue to influence our behavior in ways we don't understand. The emptiness you feel is often a result of this self-rejection. You've spent so much energy trying to be the good version of yourself that you've lost touch with who you actually are. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The path to filling that emptiness isn't about becoming a better person. It's about becoming a whole person. This process of shadow integration is what Jung called eating the bitter fruit. It requires you to acknowledge and accept the parts of yourself that you've spent your whole life trying to hide. It means recognizing that you're capable of anger, jealousy, pettiness, and selfishness, not to indulge these qualities, but to understand them as part of your complete human nature. Many people resist this process because they believe that acknowledging their negative qualities will make them a worse person. But Jung discovered the opposite is true. When you try to be only good, only positive, only successful, you create an internal split that generates the very emptiness you're trying to escape. As Jung said, the acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. The emptiness also serves another crucial function. It's your psyche's way of creating space for something new to emerge. Jung understood that psychological growth often requires a period of dissolution, a breaking down of old patterns and identities before something more authentic can take their place. He called this process the dark night of the soul and recognized it as an essential part of human development. In our culture, we're taught to avoid discomfort at all costs. We're told that happiness is the goal, that we should always be optimistic, that any form of suffering is a problem to be solved. But Jung discovered that certain forms of suffering are not only inevitable but necessary for psychological growth. The emptiness you feel might be your psyche's way of preparing you for the next stage of your development. This doesn't mean you should embrace suffering for its own sake, but rather that you should learn to listen to what your emptiness is trying to tell you. Often, it's signaling that you've outgrown your current way of being in the world. The life that once felt meaningful and fulfilling no longer fits who you're becoming. The emptiness is your psyche's way of saying, it's time for something new. Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, is the antidote to this emptiness. But individuation isn't about self-improvement or becoming a better version of yourself. It's about discovering and expressing your unique essence, your authentic self that exists beneath all the roles, expectations, and conditioning you've accumulated throughout your life. This process requires what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold the tension between opposing forces within yourself without immediately resolving that tension. Most people, when they feel the discomfort of emptiness, immediately try to escape it or fix it. But Jung discovered that this tension is actually creative. It's the space where new possibilities can emerge. The emptiness you feel might be the result of living someone else's life. From childhood, you've been told what success looks like, what happiness means, what a good life entails. You've internalized these external definitions and spent your energy trying to achieve them. But Jung understood that each person has their own unique path, their own individual purpose that can't be discovered through following societal templates. He wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." The emptiness is often a sign that you've been looking outside for too long, trying to fill an internal void with external achievements. The solution isn't to achieve more or try harder. It's to turn your attention inward and begin the difficult but rewarding work of discovering who you actually are. This inward journey is what Jung called the way of the soul, and it's fundamentally different from the way of the ego. The ego wants to achieve, to succeed, to be recognized and validated. The soul wants to express, to create, to connect with something larger than itself. The emptiness you feel is often the soul's way of protesting against a life that serves only the ego's desires. Jung discovered that the soul speaks to us through symbols, dreams, and what he called meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. But in our rational, materialistic culture, we've lost the ability to hear this deeper voice. We've been taught to trust only what can be measured, quantified, and explained, dismissing the subtle communications of the unconscious as mere fantasy or coincidence. Learning to listen to these deeper communications is essential for filling the emptiness you feel. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Pay attention to what triggers you, what you judge in others, what you find yourself repeatedly complaining about. These reactions are often projections of your own shadow material, aspects of yourself that you haven't yet accepted or integrated. The emptiness also serves as a kind of spiritual hunger, a longing for connection with something greater than your individual self. Jung understood that humans have an innate need for meaning and transcendence, but our materialistic culture has stripped away the traditional sources of this connection: religion, community, ritual, and myth. We're left with the raw human need for meaning, but no culturally sanctioned way to fulfill it. This is why Jung was so interested in mythology, religion, and the collective unconscious. He recognized that these traditional sources of meaning contained timeless wisdom about the human condition, but they needed to be reinterpreted for modern consciousness. He wrote, "The gods have become diseases," meaning that when we reject the spiritual dimension of life, those archetypal energies don't disappear. They manifest as psychological symptoms. The process of individuation that Jung described is essentially a modern form of the ancient hero's journey. It requires you to leave the safety of your known world, face your deepest fears and shadows, and return with new wisdom and wholeness. The emptiness you feel is the call to adventure, the summons to begin this transformative journey. But this journey can't be undertaken alone. Jung emphasized the importance of relationship in the individuation process. Not just romantic relationships, but deep, authentic connections with others who can witness and support your journey toward wholeness. He wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Many people try to fill their emptiness through relationships, but Jung understood that this is backwards. You can't use another person to complete yourself. You have to become whole first, and then you can create authentic relationships from that place of wholeness. The emptiness often persists in relationships because you're asking the other person to fill a void that only you can fill. This is particularly challenging in our culture, which promotes the idea that the right relationship will solve all your problems. Jung recognized that this is a projection of what he called the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine aspects of the psyche. Instead of developing a relationship with these inner figures, we project them onto others and expect them to fulfill roles that they can't possibly fulfill. The work of individuation requires you to withdraw these projections and develop a relationship with your own inner masculine and feminine energies. This doesn't mean you don't need relationships. It means you enter relationships as a whole person rather than as half a person looking for completion. Jung also understood that the emptiness we feel is often connected to our relationship with death. In our culture, we avoid thinking about death, treating it as a distant, abstract concept, rather than an immediate reality that gives life its preciousness and urgency. Jung wrote, "Shrinking away from death is something unhealthy and abnormal, which robs the second half of life of its purpose." When we avoid contemplating our mortality, we lose touch with what truly matters. We get caught up in trivial pursuits and meaningless achievements. missing the profound preciousness of being alive. The emptiness you feel might be your psyche's way of reminding you that time is finite, that this life is precious, and that you're wasting it by living inauthentically. This doesn't mean you should become morbid or obsessed with death, but rather that you should use the awareness of mortality as a compass for what truly matters. Jung called this living with death as an advisor. When you remember that your time is limited, you naturally begin to prioritize what's truly important and stop wasting energy on what's trivial. The emptiness also connects to what Jung called the unlived life, all the potential within you that you haven't yet expressed or explored. Every choice you make closes off other possibilities, and the unlived life is the accumulation of all those unexpressed potentials. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Part of the work of individuation is making peace with the unlived life, accepting that you can't be everything, do everything, or experience everything. But you can commit to being fully yourself, to expressing your unique essence as completely as possible within the constraints of your particular circumstances. This requires what Jung called the courage to be disliked. When you begin to live authentically, you inevitably disappoint some people who preferred the inauthentic version of yourself. You might lose some relationships, some opportunities, some forms of social approval. But Jung understood that this loss is necessary for gaining something far more valuable, a genuine connection with yourself and others. The emptiness you feel is often the result of living a life designed to please others rather than to express your authentic self. You've spent so much energy trying to be what others want you to be that you've lost touch with what you actually want. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But this privilege comes with a price, the courage to disappoint others in order to be true to yourself." This process of authentic self-expression is what Jung called the work of art that is your life. He understood that each person's life is a unique creative expression, a work of art that can only be created by that individual. The emptiness you feel might be your inner artist's way of protesting against a life that's too safe, too conventional, too concerned with external approval. Jung emphasized that this creative expression doesn't necessarily mean becoming an artist in the traditional sense. It means approaching your life with the same creativity, authenticity, and courage that an artist brings to their work. It means being willing to experiment, to fail, to try again, to express something that has never been expressed before. Your unique perspective on what it means to be human. The path out of emptiness, according to Jung, is not a destination, but a process. It's not about achieving some final state of fulfillment, but about engaging fully with the ongoing work of becoming yourself. He wrote, "The sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being." This light that Jung speaks of is not something you find outside yourself. It's something you create through the process of conscious living. Every time you choose authenticity over approval, every time you face your fears rather than avoiding them, every time you choose growth over comfort, you kindle this light a little brighter. The emptiness you feel is not your enemy, it's your teacher. It's showing you what happens when you live disconnected from your authentic self. It's revealing the cost of trying to be someone you're not. It's creating the space for something new to emerge. Jung understood that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. Don't pass this burden to the next generation. Use your emptiness as a catalyst for the courageous work of becoming who you truly are. The journey out of emptiness is not easy, and it's not quick. It requires you to question everything you've been told about success, happiness, and meaning. It requires you to face parts of yourself that you've been avoiding. It requires you to disappoint some people and to live with uncertainty and discomfort. But Jung discovered that this journey is the only path to genuine fulfillment, not the fleeting pleasure of external achievement, but the deep satisfaction of living authentically. As Jung wrote, The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But it's also the most liberating thing. When you stop trying to be someone else and start being yourself, the emptiness begins to transform into something else. Not fullness exactly, but aliveness, authenticity, and a sense of meaning that comes from living in alignment with your deepest truth. The emptiness you feel is not a problem to be solved. It's a doorway to be walked through. On the other side of that doorway is not a life without suffering or struggle, but a life lived with consciousness, courage, and authentic self-expression. It's a life where you're no longer a stranger to yourself, but a friend, complex, contradictory, imperfect, but whole. This is the truth behind why you feel empty inside, and this is the path forward. Not to fill the emptiness with more external things, but to use it as a guide toward authentic living. Not to eliminate the discomfort, but to transform it into creative energy. Not to become someone else, but to become more fully yourself. Journey begins with a single step, the decision to stop running from your emptiness and start listening to what it's trying to tell you. Jung showed us that this emptiness is not a curse but a calling, not a problem but a portal. The question is not whether you'll answer this call, but when, and what your life will look like once you do.